Well, we were talking earlier about certainties in life. When He-Man raises his sword, it says by the power of Grayskull, Skeletor's in trouble. When in wrestling, the guy getting beaten gets thrown against the ropes, he's going to start beating the other guy. And when we finish the program, news will break. That's just always what happens. So we get off the air 10 a.m. yesterday, and I walk out of the room for a second. I come back in. Styles and Watkins getting ready for their show, and everyone's abuzz because Brandon Aiyuk has requested a trade. So we scrambled today and wanted to find somebody that knows what the hell they're talking about, unlike us, who covers the Niners and who can give us a little bit of a bottom line on this. Cam Inman writes for the Bay Area News Group, which is a phenomenal acronym. Also, you want to know if he knows what he's talking about. First off, he's our guy, Greg Papa's friend. So he goes on that show, which is huge. Secondly, he's got a book coming out on the Niners, the franchise, the San Francisco 49ers. Now, this is officially out September 24th. But as I was telling you yesterday, as I went crazy on Prime Day, you can go on Amazon right now for Prime Day and grab yourself an advanced copy. Do it right now while supplies last. Cam Inman. It's Carmichael Dave. Good morning. How are you?
Oh, good. Good morning. Thanks for having me. That was a good pitch. I like it.
You like that? Yeah, it bordered on too long of an intro.
No, that was great. Perfect. Well, you nailed it.
I wanted to cover everything. And when we'll get to Brandon here in 2 seconds. I am curious. I'm a lifelong 49er fan. We just happen to cover and run them out here on the station. And when you're tackling something, it's not the 49ers the early years. It's not the 49ers the next generation. It's the 49. It's the franchise. When you're tackling a behemoth like that, where the hell do you? Is it chronological? Where do you even start on your little storyboard to begin the whole process?
Well, you should know if you're a Niner fan, it starts with the quarterbacks, right? So you go.
Yes.
All right, well, I got to get the quarterbacks taken care of. I got to get the legends like Ronnie Lott, and Bill Walsh, and Eddie D in there, Jerry Rice. And then you move on to Super Bowls, best draft picks, trades, free agency. I guess it's my way of taking readers down a path of what I've kind of learned about the franchise, kind of going into my 25th year covering them. So there's a lot of stuff from one-on-one interviews with all those guys I just mentioned, including Joe and Steve and all the quarterbacks. But one of the neatest aspects of it, besides kind of going back and going through time, was I got two really good guys to do the forwards. And it's the best running back.
Yes.
I got the best running back in 49ers history. I got Frank Gore to do one forward, and I got the best tight end in 49ers history, and George Kittle to do the other. And so both of those guys wrote really heartfelt words about what the 49er franchise means to them. So, I mean, that alone is pretty cool. And then it was just a fun project. It was I get pitched books every once in a while, and this was one where I could kind of put a personal touch on it. So like you said, I never saw Leo Nomalini play or Brody, but they're in there so you know a little bit about them, of what I've learned about it. But mostly it's kind of the modern, Super Bowl dynasty eras forward.
So here's the thing, though. You're doing all this. That, of course, means, I hope,
Yeah.
that since your book's coming out September 24th or around there, that this will be the year the Niners end the drought and win their Super Bowl. So now does that open us up, much like a phenomenal movie that does great at the box office, does that open us up, Cam, for perhaps future addendums, sequels, things like that to augment the franchise's history post-book release?
That means every single person on that franchise is worth writing a book about, right? So you're going to have Kyle Shanahan getting over the hump finally. You're going to have Brock Purdy,
That's right,
the Mr. Irrelevant story, the true definitive book on Brock Purdy. You're going to have there's so many superstars on this team. And that's why if you want to segue to Brandon Aiyuk, but it's just like it's not the offseason has been Brandon Aiyuk centric, but there's so many stars still on this team. That's why they're a Super Bowl contender again.
Cam, my first instinct here was this is just the John Lynch dynamic. We saw it with Bosa last year. We saw it with Debo. We've seen a number of times. You get the holdout, the pseudo trade request. I remember this time last year, all of Niner fans were just gripping over Bosa and what would happen there, and then eventually it gets wrapped up and everybody loves each other and hugs. Is it a little presumptuous to try to go down that road with Lynch? Is this different at all to you?
I think this is just it's different in that Brandon Aiyuk's shown more impatience than the other guys have. I mean, Debo requested a trade 2 years ago back at draft time, right? Aiyuk's waited until a week before training camp to get his out there because he's exhausted every other avenue. I mean, he did the I'm unfollowing the team. I'm going to troll the fans by wearing a Pittsburgh Pirates hat, or I'm going to tweet Mike Tomlin. I'm going to show you with Jaden Daniels, the Washington quarterback, to indicate I want to go there. But then, I mean, when it comes down to it, the 49ers are going to be his team in 2024. And where it goes from there, I'm not sure. But, you know, he's requested this trade, what was it, July 16th, right? None of the Niners extensions for their homegrown stars each summer have come before this time. It's usually closer to camp. Fred Warner got his later in July. Kittle got his mid-August. Debo got his early August. He went to training camp, was a hold-in for a few days. Bosa was different because he missed training camp last year, and everybody knew Nick Bosa is a maniac and will train well on his own. And he also signed the biggest contract in NFL history for a non-quarterback. Brandon Aiyuk is not Nick Bosa. So I wouldn't panic about this until maybe a week into camp to really kind of see if the feelings are as cold as they seem to be out of Brandon's had this like really skeptical view of negotiations ever since the offseason began, when he was at his locker and kind of gripping a football and looking sad, whereas everybody that's been around the Niners, including their hierarchy or reporters, everybody expects a deal to get done later in the summer like the others. And if it doesn't happen, it's too bad, because Brandon Aiyuk obviously is a number one target for Brock Purdy. He's been a back-to-back 1,000-yard receiver. He's earned a payday. Do the Niners have to pay it? They don't have to, because he's under contract for this year still.
So, in looking from that point, you mentioned, in fact, we played it was about 60 seconds of sound from that locker room visit, if you will, and to hear the disappointment in Ayuk's voice. And then since then, they used their first round pick on a receiver. And then again, I'm reaching here, but I can't imagine it's a total coincidence that the receiver show, we were talking about this earlier, is on Netflix last week and is running now. And you see the way Deebo Samuel is just absolutely fawned over, and rightfully so by the franchise. You couple that, Cam, with Davante Adams, and with no offense to the Raiders, I look at Davante and I see some similarities to Randy Moss's tenure there as well. You've got a receiver that left one place he was comfortable. He wanted to get paid. He wanted to play with his college roommate. And now, in that show, he is openly just trashing Jimmy Garoppolo and the whole situation there. And I wonder if Brandon is looking at that, and if he's thinking at all, be careful what you wish for, because I want the money, but at the same time, it's tough to beat Kyle Shanahan's offense.
It is tough. And it's rare that the Niners would trade away an asset like that, right? And so I think we're past the point of a trade until, next offseason, because whatever the Niners get for him, it can't be a draft pick for this year. It's not going to help them for this season. If it's a player-to-player trade, it would have to be a blockbuster. And the reason those don't happen is because of the salary cap ramifications. Guys have been given huge signing bonus, and so teams don't want to take that hit. Could it happen? I just think it's very, very, very rare case that would happen. I don't think that they're trading Brandon Aiyuk. Now, DeForest Buckner was the big trade that rattled the franchise, about 4 years ago?
Yeah.
And he wanted market-setting money because he was this all-pro defensive tackle that was coming into his own and coming into his prime. And they did not want to pay him Aaron Donald-type money, but the Indianapolis Colts did. And so Buck went. He was very well-liked. They let him go for a first-round draft pick. He went to Indy, got his money, but he hasn't won anything. Like you said, what's the trade-off? I think a lot of these guys, it depends where you are in your life, right? And what's your financial situation. They've had a lot of guys on their team right now that have been paid. And so right now, these guys want to win right now with the 49ers. Brandon Aiyuk has not been – he's been paid as a first-round draft pick, but he's going to get a big-time raise at some point over the next year.
I'm not going to put you on the spot, because that would take a whole different segment to ask for specific names. But when you do talk about the possibility of a trade, as small as it may be, in your opinion, looking at this roster, if they could find like for like, I'm saying talent and I'm saying salary, Can this team afford to lose a talent like Brandon Aiyuk this year by let me back up, Cam.
Yeah.
Could it better serve the Niners in this made-up scenario to substitute a talent like Brandon Aiyuk for a like talent, perhaps in the secondary, perhaps, you name it, just from a pure winning standpoint? Is there a scenario you see where you're like, well, if you get this guy for Brandon and you plug him in on this place on the defense, they might actually be a better team considering they've got Pearsall and the rest of that receiving core? Is that a scenario in your head at all?
I think it's a fair question to entertain, because that's where you say, do they have could they use another defensive end? I mean, it would be great if they brought Joey Bosa in to pair with Nick Bosa, but that's not going to happen because the Chargers just reworked Bosa's contract. So there's your financial ramifications. Say Aiyuk wants to go to Washington to play with his Arizona State buddy, Jaden Daniels, who else went to LSU after. But anyhow, they're best friends. Well, Washington's got a couple wide receivers there. Would they part with Terry McLaurin? I mean, it's like, then you just kind of it's like, how fast would he learn the offense?
Yeah.
Does this really make sense? Because Ayuk's a younger wide receiver. There's about 5 other wide receivers around the NFL that are still looking to get paid, like a CD Lamb, Cortland Sutton, Amari Cooper, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. With those teams, I don't see how an even swap of those guys would work out, because if the Niners traded for one, they're going to have to pay those guys a bunch of money, and they're all going to want about the same money that Ayuk's looking for, right? So it just doesn't make much sense for them to swap that out. And the other thing is, I think Ricky Pearsall could be a really good wide receiver. He's a first-round draft pick. He looked good in spring camp. But again, it's spring camp. There's no press coverage. There's no really schemes going on. So I kind of reserve judgment on Ricky. And it's just really hard for a rookie wide receiver to make an impact immediately in an NFL offense, especially one as complex as Shanahan's. So I think you want to keep that unit intact. It is intact. It's going to be a very highly productive offense. And just make that run at the Super Bowl this year, no matter what, and readdress it next year if he doesn't come to a contract in the next 2 months.
That question I asked, and I appreciated, you had a wonderful piece in the Mercury about this, and that list of receivers you mentioned is actually what put that in my head. Hey, maybe not for a receiver, but is there another place to substitute? If you have not read Cam Inman's piece on this, you can catch it off his Twitter or hit Google. It will catch you up on the whole thing. Last thing for you, and I appreciate your time. I'd love to get your just a general quick take with Brock Purdy, since we haven't talked about this before. Going into this season, the year before last, the crash out against the Eagles when he was hurt, then the revenge this year in Philadelphia, and getting, falling once again just short, as close as you can get to winning without winning because it was overtime.
Right.
Cam, you mentioned earlier you've covered this team for the better part of 3 decades. You've covered football. I'm right around there when it comes to football coverage. I don't remember ever seeing a story treated as weird as the story of Brock Purdy, who, even if you're not a Niner fan, I'm not expecting you to put him on your shoulders, but you're talking about Mr. Irrelevant stepping in and having about as good a start to a career as you can without winning championships. This is a Disney movie. It's one of those great American sports stories. Yet it seems, though half acknowledge that, the other half just are falling all over each other to discredit the man. And I've never seen anything like that.
The close comparison, I don't really want to make this parallel comparison, but a guy that comes out of nowhere and kind of rocks the NFL world where they're not suspecting him to do stuff as a quarterback of the 49ers, right? And it's been, like you said, it's been an amazing story. Purdy has amazing self-awareness of, I'm surrounded by stars, but I also know I have to do my job, and he does it incredibly well. He's got this hidden moxie that only fans see, where he really gets pumped up, and he processes everything mentally so well. He's not the 6'4" gunslinger, so that's why people have doubts. But so go back 10 years ago, and there's Colin Kaepernick coming out, replacing Alex Smith, and he's this dual threat wonder kid that can run really fast and throw bullets, and next thing you know, he's in the Super Bowl. And next thing you know, he's going into his 4th year, and he's going to get a new contract. So, and a lot of people had doubts about Colin, and there were reasons to have those doubts. I'm talking football only. Brock Purdy doesn't have those doubts because he can make all these incredible throws but he's also got this, he's a great leadership. He has the coach's trust more than any other quarterback has in the Shanahan era because he has a great command of the offense, a great command of the defense. And he's a leader, very well liked throughout the locker room. And it's been an amazing transition to watch. Very humble kid. I've really enjoyed covering him. He's one of those kids, his first year and a half before he became a starter, he would sit at his locker. He would just quietly review plays. And if you went over to ask him something, there would be a really nice, cordial back and forth conversation where he'd ask you questions of what it's like to do your job and what's expected out of a 49er quarterback. And just like, look, Brock, I cover two things. I cover the team and I cover the quarterback. It's just how it is with the 49ers. Everybody wants to know what's going on with the 49er quarterback. So he knew exactly what he's stepping into. And he's fulfilled so many expectations and beyond them. But guess what? It's a new year and he's coming off a record-setting season. The fact that he did it with a surgically repaired arm that's, I think, the story that was really lost last year. Is I don't think the nation understood what was going on with Brock Purdy. At this time last year, he was just starting to throw a football. And then he goes and throws the 49ers to a Super Bowl with 4,280 yards in 16 games. It was remarkable, amazing, and I think he could top it this year.
So if you're a Niner fan listening to this, and we have a lot of Niner fans listening, what would you have them hang their hat on as the biggest reason or reasons to be optimistic about finally getting over the hump this season?
Besides the fact that I have a book coming out.
Which, by the way, can I add, September 24th or right around there, you can pre-order on Amazon Books as well, or Triumph Books. It is with a foreword from Frank Gore, the George Kittle in there as well. So as you said, the greatest running back and the greatest tight end of all time. 49ers, a curated history of the faithful. I'm looking at the cover right now. It's awesome. The whole franchise covered by our friend Cam Inman joining us.
All right. Now the reason for that optimism, like, to be honest, is you have the entire offense back intact, right? And you have Shanahan still calling these plays. You got Nick Bosa, Fred Warner. You got a really good defense with it. Again, another new defensive coordinator who knows the scheme well. But beyond that, look at the league, okay? Look at the NFC. Which NFC team is really going to come after them? I mean, I'm having a hard time buying into the Detroit Lions. I mean, I know they've made a great run last season. It's hard to sustain consistency in professional sports. The Niners have done it for about 6 years now. Can the Detroit Lions do it back-to-back with Jared Goff? There were some issues there at the end of last season where they cracked. Obviously, they blew a 24-7 halftime lead. I think the Packers are on the rise. You look at the NFC East, it's kind of a mess, as usual. Like, the Cowboys, always a disaster. The Eagles trying to climb out of that hole they dug last year. You look at the NFC South, not much there. I think the Atlanta Falcons might surprise a little bit. And then you just I know the NFC West, people think the LA Rams are on the come. The Seahawks have a new coach. Arizona Cardinals are a perpetual mess. So I think the Niners are positioned to get back to the Super Bowl relatively easily. And then it's, okay, will they meet Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs again? And no team has won the Super Bowl 3 years in a row. That's the Chiefs' mission. And I think the Niners are a better matchup this time around than last year for them. So I would love to see it again. But I think I predicted after the Super Bowl, like 2 days after this last Super Bowl, that the Niners would get back, that they would play the Los Angeles Chargers, coached by Jim Harbaugh, and they would be going for the Lombardi Trophy in New Orleans, which is where, of course, Harbaugh was coaching the Niners when they suffered their first Super Bowl loss. So the NFL is so cyclical, I figure that's a weird twist of life.
As somebody who also covers basketball and is a lifelong Niner fan, I just hope that 20 years from now, I'm not looking back like Sonics fans or Jazz fans are to those Michael Jordan Bulls and wondering what could have been if those Bulls hadn't existed, and hoping that the Chiefs are not the Bulls to the San Francisco 49ers. Here's to hoping. Cam Inman. Follow him at Cam Inman, INMAN. Very, very simple. And once again, happy to plug the book coming out officially September 24th. You can order it on Amazon right now. The franchise, the San Francisco 49ers. I'm looking forward to rolling through that and really learning some things that even the biggest fans, I'm sure, had no idea, as you mentioned earlier, a deep dive if there ever was one. So I appreciate the time, Cam, and I hope we can bring you on here again soon as the season progresses.
I appreciate it too. Have a great week. Thanks for having me.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. That's Cam Inman on the Brandon Aiyuk situation, and I thought he broke that down